Crystal Palace triumph over Aston Villa, a step toward their first major trophy. Crystal Palace delivered a stunning performance to defeat Aston Villa, inching closer to what could be their first major trophy in club history. In a highly anticipated matchup, Palace showcased grit, tactical discipline, and attacking flair, sealing a win that has sent shockwaves through the footballing world. The game unfolded with high intensity as both teams aimed to
look at from the first day he's walked into that club, the difference he's made. It wasn't easy to follow someone like Roy Hodgson, who's been there and is a bit of a legend at that football club, and the achievements that he's had there. So the fact that he's done so well, it's full credit to him, to that squad. Losing a player like Michael Elise in the summer is never easy to replace. But I think they've done an incredible job. And, you know, things change in football very quickly as well. If you looked at a couple of weeks ago, tough couple of results against Man City and Newcastle, and they've bounced back in incredible fashion. So for them, it's been an incredible season, a great effort to get to the final, and it'll be interesting to see who they play and how they can do.
Jamie, I think we touched on this last week because usually the manager of the year is the manager who wins the Premier League.
Yeah.
And Arne Slot is the bookies' favourite, you'd have to say, to be just that man. But if Glasner was to win the FA Cup for Crystal Palace, he's in the conversation, isn't he?
Yeah, I think so. I think you have to give him the credit he deserves. He's done an incredible job. As we just said, he lost to Elise, you know, the best player. You know, and you saw this season the way they've played. I've really liked them. They went a little bit back to old school Crystal Palace, where it was, you know, back to front. They were hard to beat. They weren't trying to play too much football. You see everyone trying to play out from the back, getting caught on the ball. But when I've watched Palace this season, it's been really good. And then all of a sudden they picked up momentum. You know, I think Mateta for them has been absolutely fantastic. And, you know, Glasner deserves all the plaudits because he's turned it around for them. And, you know, that win yesterday against Aston Villa was unbelievable. I didn't see that coming. And fair play to him. He's a great manager. We talk about, you know, Crystal Palace having to keep hold of their best players. They might have to worry about keeping hold of their manager.
You say keeping hold of their manager and their best players. Both of you mentioned Michael Elise and his exit and how Palace have still managed to do what they've done this season. Asmir, if Eberechi Eze was to go, he's been in absolutely sensational form of late, and a fantastic goal again yesterday in the semi-final. Should Palace be worried about losing him in the summer, and how desperate will they be to hold on to him?
Yeah, I think there's always a natural worry about that because that's the nature and the reality for a lot of the, I guess, can we call them mid-table clubs? Because if one of the big boys, as with Michael Elise, Bayern Munich came in calling, if one of the big boys come, there's been rumours of Man City before, there's always that natural possibility that these things can happen. I would imagine teams like Crystal Palace, who are incredibly well run, will have other plans and players to potentially replace the ones that could go. But if they do go, they know they're going to get an amazing return for them in terms of a financial return. But as well as that, it's never going to be easy to replace them. And you know, they have to enjoy them while they can, and then, you know, what the future will bring, we'll have to wait and see.
Well, which club should be looking at him then? Name your club.
I mean, any top 5-6 club has to be looking at him. You know, what is the price, how much do they have to pay? I think he could make a difference at any of these clubs. I really do. I think he's such a special talent, such a special player, and he's done it really well. He's progressed and developed really throughout the Premier League years. Crystal Palace have given him an incredible platform for him to really become the player that he is. And I think, you know, he's going to be a fantastic player for Crystal Palace, whoever going forward, as well as England.
You know what I like about him? You know, obviously he's got this huge talent. When I've watched him before, and, you know, maybe at the start of the season, he'd drift in and out of games. You know, sometimes I'd watch him and be like, go and get on the ball, go and make things happen. You know, he's the player that they look to, and he wasn't quite doing it at the start of the season for me. But when I've watched him recently, he's demanding the ball. He wants to go and get it. He's playing for 90 minutes. You know, he's getting on it all the time. He's dictating the game. And I think that's when the big teams will then look at you and say, we need a player who's going to make it happen all the time, not some of the time. And I think now that's where he's grown into the season, where when I've watched him, especially yesterday as well, and the games recently against big clubs, he's produced over the 90 minutes, and that's what I think he needed to be better at.
Eze's one. You talked about Mateta, Mark Gahey as well, of course.
Adam Wharton.
Exactly what I was going to ask you about. How good can he be? And could you place him in a top 5 club as well?
I think he can play for anyone in the Premier League, yeah, absolutely. I think he's fantastic. His awareness, you know, he always plays, you know, with his body open. He wants to get it and play. He's left-footed, lovely left foot. He can dictate the game. You know, as a midfielder, you've got to be able to be box-to-box. He's got an edge to his game. You know, I think if you look at teams who would be looking at midfielders, Manchester United springs to mind. Someone who you need a proper midfielder in there who can get on the ball, who's young, he's energetic. I'd love him at Tottenham. I just don't know if we'd be able to afford him. But, I think there'd be big clubs looking at him as well. And, look, Crystal Palace they've done an incredible job. And they're going to have to try and really concentrate on keeping their best players because, this is a good club, Crystal Palace. They've got good ownership. They're always in the Premier League. They bring through young players as well through their academy. And I think you've got to try and keep your players to cement your place in the Premier League. You don't want to sell your best player. You might let one go. You can't stop it. Elise going to Bayern Munich. You can't stop that. But, you Adam Ward, you really got to try and keep these players at your football club. On
the flip side, Asmir, a tough week and a half or 2 weeks for Aston Villa out of the Champions League, now out of the FA Cup, and that came off the back of that really, really late hurt in midweek with Manchester City and that late goal. What's gone wrong?
Yeah, I think I'm afraid maybe Aston Villa are just running a little bit out of steam. I think when you look at their excursions and I think that how much they've put into the Champions League and, of course, this Premier League and all the cup competitions, I think, again, it's very difficult to make those steps. I mean, their squad is good, but it takes maybe a few years to really put a squad together where you're going to have players that can really compete on four fronts. So for them, I think that's maybe just a case where it's maybe a little bit of fatigue, a little bit of physical, mental fatigue. And those sort of blows against Man City, they linger for days. And I think the fact that carried into the weekend, I don't think helped them at all.
Yeah.
I think not long ago we were eulogising about Aston Villa's transfer window because of the squad that they'd built with the likes of Marcus Rashford and Asensio coming in. Just particularly on that rivalry between Rashford and Watkins, if you like.
Yeah.
What have you made of that competition, and have you agreed with the choices that Unai Emery's made?
Well, listen, at the end of the day, I think he's come in, Rashford, and done a really good job. I think Watkins has been your main man for Aston Villa for a long period of time. I think it was a little bit harsh leaving him out. Could you have played them together? Could you play Rashford off the left? But he's liked to play Rashford down the middle. Watkins got the hump the other day, and he come out and said that he was fuming about not being picked for the PSG game. I think Unai Emery ended up getting that one wrong in the end, tactically. I think he got it wrong, Unai Emery, at the end of the Man City game. He brought off Matty Cash, he put Disasi at right back, and Doku skinned him, and they won the game. So there's been a few moments for me where Emery has maybe got it wrong. Look, yesterday Rashford was injured, and Watkins had his chance up front, and he didn't do the business for him. So look, it was a really disappointing day that for Aston Villa, and I think maybe the winds, come out of the sails, and they've really struggled to get it over the line. But I was disappointed in Villa. I thought they were flat yesterday. Palace, I feel like they wanted it more. They was at it, and it wasn't a great performance. And Watkins, look, he needs to be better if he wants to be the number one guy. He's got to produce on the big moment.
Just on Rashford, he could be out for the rest of the season, according to Unai Emery, with that hamstring problem. There is an option for Aston Villa to make that deal permanent.
Yeah.
Number one, do you think they will make that option and exercise that option? And what do you think Marcus Rashford will want to do? Because in January, he maybe didn't have that many suitors, but come the summer, given how he's performed for Villa, there could be more, couldn't there?
Yeah, I think there'll be more suitors now. I think, bigger clubs like maybe Barcelona, PSG might look at the situation and say, could we do with Marcus Rashford? He's a huge talent. I think he's done well since he's gone there. I think Aston Villa should definitely try and sign him. I think it's a £40 million deal. I think they should definitely try and get it done. I was disappointed in him yesterday, seeing him at the boxing. I'll be honest with you. I think that for me is where he's out of touch with reality. His team has just lost. I know he's not played, but his team's just lost in a semi-final. They're absolutely dead on their feet. The fans have travelled down from Birmingham, spent money. The whole club's gone there, trying to get to the FA Cup final. And you see your star man, who potentially could be your star man, who you're going to sign, ringside at the boxing. That, for me, annoyed me. And that's where Marcus Rashford, I think, has got to understand the reality of the position that he's in. He's a huge star. And I get it. You get invited to all these events. I get it. But sometimes you just got to say no. Sometimes you just got to go home. Watch the boxing, on the telly. Because that, for me, is where he lets himself down. He's been brilliant for Aston Villa. I've really liked it. He's been hungry. He's been working hard. He's been scoring goals. He picks up an injury. Don't go to the boxing when Aston Villa have just got beat 3-0. Just don't do it. And that's where I think people look at him and go, is he the right man for us? Is he our talisman? Is he the guy that people are going to buy the shirts and have him on the back? Because I think a lot of Aston Villa fans last night would have been disappointed in seeing him there.
Asma, if one of your teammates did what Jamie O'Hara says Marcus Rashford shouldn't have done last night, what would your reaction be?
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with Jamie. I think you have to be smart at certain moments. Pick your moments when you can do things, when you can't do things, especially this day and age with such an incredible public attention on every single one of these players. And I think the sort of profile that Marcus Rashford has, he has to be aware of these things. I think the team around him has to be aware of these things. And I think sometimes you have to make maybe a little bit of a better and smarter decision. So for him, it's a learning experience, but at the same time, he's not a young player anymore.
No.
I think he's a player now that's in his prime. I think from many different sides of it, of course, the footballing side, but also the off-field side. He's done some incredible things. But sometimes you have to pick your moments and be smarter in certain situations. But at the same time, he's got to really focus on his football. I mean, he's in the best years of his career, and I think now, if he really wants to take things on to the next level and be that main man, you know, it's really down to him and whether he embraces that challenge.
Question for both of you. Look, Unai Emery said now the focus is clearly on trying to qualify for the Champions League again next season for Aston Villa. It looks so tight for those Champions League positions. They are currently 7th. They're 3 points away from those qualification places. Who makes the top 5 for you?
God, it's so difficult. I thought Chelsea might have dropped out and ended up finishing 7th. They got a really good result against Asmir's Everton yesterday. They've got some tough games. It's about the running, the fixtures that they've got. It'll be interesting to see, you know, Chelsea, Nottingham Forest fixtures. I know Chelsea got Liverpool next. They might win the league today, so they might be in a different frame of mind after that. So, it's tight. It's who wants it the most, who can get... It's fine margins, you know, all that... I think Man City are in now. I think Newcastle are in now. I think Chelsea, Nottingham Forest, Aston Villa are going to fight it out for that 5th spot. And it's just who can get it done over the line. There's 3 games left? It's going to be a tight one. So hard to call. Really hard.
Asma, Jamie says 4 are as good as in. Do you agree with that? And who do you think the other one's going to be?
Yeah, I agree. I think it'll be as is. I think these are the 5 teams that are going to be in the top 5 when the season finishes. You know, it's nothing really against the other teams. I just think, you know, if you're looking at Chelsea, their pedigree, and, you know, Man City, of course, they're going to be hungry to finish in that position. I think Newcastle, the way they're playing, with the firepower they have, I think it's very difficult to bet against them. So I think the top 5 will be as is. Nottingham Forest, I think if you offered them European football at the beginning of the season, they would have believed you. So I think the fact of the matter is it's such an incredible run, such an incredible effort to get to this position. But I think